We can hear you, Ron, at scale.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'd like to welcome participants to the hybrid meeting of February 13th. Call to order, Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Delicio.
Here.
Foley.
Here.
Droney.
Here.
Ms. Philbrick is out of town. Ms. Penny.
Here.
Thank you. Looks like we have a quorum. I'd like to remind all board members, guests, be recognized by the chair if you wish to speak, and this meeting is being recorded. First item on the agenda is acknowledge receipt of correspondence. We all have given us 4 municipal notices. Subsequently, I put in our meeting packet a email from Ms. Hill on 2/8, Ms. Iavoni on 2/9, and Ms. Iavoni on 2/11. At this point, I'd like any public comments with items not on the agenda for the limited amount of time. Any from the public like to speak?
Excuse me, Ron. It's Gary Russell. I couldn't get my hand up on the meeting thing. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Gary.
Hi, just briefly, Black History Month and doesn't get a lot of coverage in Manchester by the Sea, but for planners, I wanted to bring to your attention a really great documentary airing on PBS this month called Jim Crow of the North that explains the history of racial covenants and redlining in housing development. And then also, if you're interested in much broader understanding of racial segregation in planning and housing, a great book to check out is called The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. And it's a really great text that it covers a broader range of racial segregation, but it talks about racial covenants, exclusionary zoning, the history of white flight, etc. So given that we continue to talk about diversifying our housing in Manchester by the Sea, I think these are 2 great resources for the public and planners to check out. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. First item on the agenda is the MBTA Communities Multi-Family Zoning District 3A. I'd like to start first with an update from Betsy. The grants, could you give us an update?
So both Sue Croft and I are looking at various grant programs for assistance with the mapping and the Excel programs. The state has a particular system they want us to use. And I don't really have a lot of experience with this, so I've contacted CHAPA and Mass Housing Partnership and MAPC. We applied for, the town applied for a grant under the TAP program potentially for this. And I'm actually meeting on Thursday with Sue Croft to go over potential other options. And it would be pretty much for the technical issues of the GIS shape files and the integration with the database.
Okay.
Can I add a comment to that?
Go ahead.
So I reviewed the action plan applications for all the communities that have submitted so far. And it looks like the vast majority have gone through the Mass Housing Partnership, because then you can get independent consultants. A lot, Emily Innes Associates, RKG, Horsley Witten, Barrett Planning. So I think that would be a really good spot for Manchester to go through that to get an unbiased independent consulting firm.
Laura?
Question for Betsy, what's the turnaround time to hear on the grants or, what assistance is provided and how that fits in with the calendar that you drew?
Some of the turnaround is fairly short, like a couple of months. So, I'm anticipating that it's mid-February now. We should have a decision for somebody to assist in this by May.
Okay, great. And is there a backup plan if for any reason the grant doesn't go?
We're applying for a couple of different grants, so I'm pretty optimistic that we'll get something that will assist us.
Yes, one more question. Are we looking into engineering grants? Doing engineering studies? Some towns are doing that.
I'm not sure that you'd need an engineering study per se. It's more of just database and GIS. And a lot of these planning firms handle GIS.
Okay, because some of these towns have the same issues that we have with wetlands and being close to the wastewater treatment. So they're getting engineering studies, and I thought that
I
would
can
be
look
helpful.
into that.
Sarah Creighton?
So the grant is for to pay a consultant, and do we have to do an RFP for the consultant, or can we just take from a state list?
We could take from a state list.
Okay, the procurement time is.
Because some of those people like Horsley Witten are on the state list, so.
Okay.
That's what we try to do.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Betsy. So about a month ago, we had a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, Select Board. They recommended the creation of a task force and voted to recommend the composition. The idea is to have diverse composition to get a range of perspectives to the table. This is a fact-finding group to study the pros and cons of the 40A, 3A, and report back to the planning board. They have no decision-making power, purely advisory. The more information the planning board receives, the better decisions we can make. Summary of the task force makeup and charge was included in your packets. Like to move forward with any comments or move forward with voting yay or nay to the task force. Any comments?
I have comments. I think we've already started this conversation at our last meeting. So the planning board has been elected by the people of Manchester to do this exact job. We are a diverse board. We have lots of backgrounds, and our power is given to us by Mass General Law. So for us to create a task force, when we have not done this in the past, we've just done zoning recodification. I just don't understand why this board would take a suggestion from another board that doesn't have the charge of zoning to do our job for us. So I am very concerned that members of this board would recommend, not doing the job that we were elected to do.
Any other comments?
So I have a couple of comments on that. The only body that can approve a new zoning bylaw for the town is the town meeting.
Correct.
And we are certainly enabled to provide a recommendation and a report to the town meeting as to what we think is going to happen. And I believe that's the plan here. The task force will report to the planning board. The planning board would then take that into its consideration and then submit its own proposal to the town meeting. I don't think there's any usurpation of our power. I think what we're trying to do is build some consensus as to what kind of zoning changes would be acceptable to the town. And rather than just bringing this to the floor, we'll be much better off with a wide range of perspectives as to how and whether this rezoning can be done.
I agree. And I think that's why we reach out to the boards and ask for recommendations and their input, and we take that consideration. I don't think we need to give advisory boards a voice at the table of elected officials.
Any other comments from the board? Laura?
I'm in favor of the task force model. I like the representation of the various board members on it. And particularly appreciate having a member with a background in climate change or climate resiliency. I think that is going to be important to this to this work. And so I think it's a good way to get a, you know, kind of a broad cross-section of a number of different boards, and I certainly see us still being integral with the not the decision making, but the review and the recommendations, and having a strong voice in it, and seems to me like a very balanced way to do it.
Okay, Mary or Sarah?
Yeah, I'll have to agree with what Christina said. I think this is exactly what people are elected to do, this study. And we did get a good email this morning in our packet, and I've been reading through that, and I would like to have the time to read through it more and look at some of these, the case law with this, with like task forces and being able to use town staff and resources in those areas. I don't know if we're in compliance with that, but with this sheet that says the MBTA zoning task force, the first line says the purpose of the task force would be to assess whether the town should proceed with complying with chapter 40A. I would like to see if there is a task force, which again, I'm against, is that they don't decide whether the town should proceed or not. They are strictly data gathering for the planning board. And I don't see really any data points spelled out of what this task force would do or accomplish. So I can't see moving forward at this point, not knowing what they're actually tasked with. So you know, there's a lot of things to this, and I don't see any detail on this.
Did get an answer on that email from town council, and we take our direction from town council, and town council's opinion is that no way that the task force will usurp the planning board's power or take away any from its task of recommending zoning amendments. The MBTA zoning task force will bring recommendations to the planning board, and the planning board has the ability to accept those recommendations or not. That's the ruling from town council, and that's who we listen to. Any other comments from the board? Sarah?
I also am in favor of the task force model. And I think that the task force can needs to as they start their work, they have an opportunity to refine their purpose. And I would caution us about the assessing whether we should proceed or not as the first piece, because we don't know what the compliance is. So I would just ask that that at least as we think about this, that we first assess the best way to comply. And then once we have that, then we can assess it. And so I would urge the planning board to also be open-minded and think about all the options for compliance. And then once we know what those are, assess them, as opposed to assessing them in the affirmative or the negative, without any specificity. So I think that the task force I've laid out is fine. And, I think the first task for me is to understand the compliance and how do we best comply. And I agree that the task force meetings will be open to the public, so we can all attend and participate, I'm sure. And that then we'll take it up here as we are required to have public hearings on any zoning changes. So I'll move to accept the recommended MBTA task force.
I would like to make another final comment before we get here.
I'm just gonna
We
make a
have a
motion.
discussion.
Okay, great.
Motion. Is that okay? Procedure.
Yeah, sure.
Make
So
one-
I'll make a motion to accept the MBA task force as presented. Secondly.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
There is, I would like to make a comment.
No?
So during the past year, once this law has been passed, several members of this board have asked for this to be put on the agenda, and it wasn't. And I have been made aware through the town administrator that he filled this role in conjunction with the select board because we hadn't done our job and he was filling a void. So I would like to make that abundantly clear that the select board and the town administrator felt that we did not do this. I've asked
What does
personally,
this have to do with the motion on?
because I am concerned that
I
this-
just, did you make the connection between?
the
task
setup
force
of the
motion?
board of the task force leads the chair. And I personally have asked for this topic to be put on the agenda several times. And so if the task force is going to be part of the chair, I have a very big concern because I don't feel that you were doing your duties, listening to the board members of concerns over the last year.
Any further comments on the motion?
Clarification, I believe that the composition is 2 planning board members, one who will chair the committee, not necessarily that the chair of the planning board will be on the task
No,
force.
that's correct.
Okay.
So I guess I would like copies of emails and conversations. I mean, this has never been brought to the planning board. This is just being brought to us for us to vote to, I mean, our charge
We
on the
had a
website.
meeting with the joint select board a month ago to try and discuss.
So it was brought to us, Ron. We never discussed it as a board. This was already, no, we're not. We're voting on it. It's already been predetermined. It's in a format. I would like to request the emails and conversations where this happened. The planning board is in charge of zoning, and there's been conversations, obviously, outside of this board that made this happen.
We had a joint meeting with the board, the select board, and we did discuss it. And we also walked line by line through the application.
Mhm.
Line by line jointly with the select board, each person went around and made comments. So just a clarification that it was, it has been reviewed by this. board.
The application was reviewed.
The
There was a lot of discussion.
discussion.
I listened to the meeting. I would beg to differ. I think a lot of information was brought to the discussion.
Speaking.
So again, I think I'm requesting the email conversations between the select board and the town administrator and Betsy where this happened, because I do not feel that there has been adequate conversation in this public forum.
On the motion to create a task force, and any other discussion? Roll call vote, Ms. Tenney.
Yes. Yes.
Only,
Yes,
chair votes yes, Ms. Delicio,
No,
Ms. Foley?
No.
Passes 4-2. Okay, MAPC preliminary traffic study report discussion.
Oh, excuse me, there's one more thing. Should we put on for our next meeting the agenda of how we appoint our members to that task force?
Very competitive.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And that may well be to are not strangers to each other as well.
We can get on and let's see if we can mute that.
So Betsy, can you please detail what's the schedule on MAPC and what we're looking for?
So
from the board?
MAPC did a presentation at the December meeting. And they asked for comments regarding what they had provided. And the board hasn't had a chance to review it. It's a situation where they originally were coming to this meeting to do a final presentation. I didn't feel that was correct, given the fact that they really hadn't had some comment from this board. So they have been put off until the first meeting in March, and they're asking for some additional comments.
Well, you would expect more of them. So
So as far as process for additional comments, I'm thinking maybe the board will send you their comments.
That'd be fine, or if you want to discuss it,
which area?
On the agenda to discuss openly, or when are they expected back? In April?
they're coming back the first meeting in March.
In March.
So
So we would have one more meeting.
one more
to
meeting,
discuss it.
right?
What's the
is there
pleasure
a
of the
reason
board?
why we can't discuss it now?
Is the board prepared to discuss it now?
Did you receive my comments?
I did get your comments.
I think we provided comments when they came the first time.
I believe we agreed that we were gonna all send comments to Betsy.
So I guess there was a document that was put into our folders maybe a few hours before the meeting. And I guess I'm continually concerned. I mean, the planning board's responsibility is to conduct studies and plans of the resources and the needs of the town. I don't even understand where the downtown improvement came up with this.
Oh, I put that up because you asked for it.
I don't know where they came into. I have the scope of the work of the parking study, and the downtown improvement and advisory board seems to have gone rogue and done some studies, come up with a PowerPoint, which we've never been presented with. So I really do feel like there is a, know what?
It was presented in December, at the December meeting. MAPC provided and went through.
No, she's talking about different.
No, I'm not. No, they
Actually, you're not
didn't.
talking about a study, it was a survey.
The survey, and the cover page of the survey clearly says in conjunction with the MAPC parking study. I am very concerned about what is happening behind the scenes in this town.
I think,
Our job is to do studies of the needs and the resources of this town. Someone is authorizing independent advisory boards to do this. So I'm just really concerned continually when this is happening. Was the grant money used to do this? Who authorized this? I'm just continually.
so the downtown improvement group did their own survey. They just went out and surveyed residents and property owners and merchants. How the parking spaces are being used. That's all they did. It wasn't-
It's our job. They don't have that independent authority to do that.
Super, you expressed this concern at one of the last meetings in November, December. I went back through because you claimed that there wasn't any discussion about it. I went back through all of Sue Brown's memos and there were a couple of other documents on the SharePoint. And almost every month of last year, there was an update of what was going on with traffic studies and parking studies.
Correct, and none involved the downtown improvement committee.
Some of them did.
Absolutely not, and it's not in the scope of this work of the project that we agreed to and voted at town meeting. And it's on the cover page of this process. In fact, I did some surveys, and so the information that I collected, I thought I was doing for the MAP study. So there's been a massive miscommunication on this parking study. I interviewed 5 businesses, so I don't know where this information went to, who collected it. My understanding, it was going towards the actual study that we were given on the 12th of December. But clearly, as a planning board member that agreed or didn't agree to the scope of work, the Downtown Improvement Committee is not involved with this study at all. And apparently their front page of their report includes our study that we, as the planning board, authorized.
So, how would the board like to get comments? Should we give them to Betsy, or do we want to discuss them now, or do we want to wait for them to come back in March? Mary?
So are we sticking with the original scope or is it expanded? I'm vastly confused right now.
We just comments on their presentation, I believe. Is what we're looking.
No, but I'm also referencing what Christine just said, so are we still, are we still working with MAPC on this parking study, or is it also with downtown?
They're trying to
Improvement?
wrap it up. And downtown improvement, as I understand it, has been involved. They were involved in some of the data collection. As I understand it, a number of people were invited to participate in the data collection. And the results that were in the SharePoint were posted in December, and then they were reposted into SharePoint for this meeting.
The
and-
results of,
The results of the parking study. Then there was an additional study that was VHB, I believe it was VHB.
that was even different. That's for street improvements.
That was for street improvements.
But for
And
part of
and that
that,
was DPW, I believe.
with the DPW, and part of that was they wanted to see how the parking spaces in town were being used. So they conducted their own survey.
so not having the data in front of me, it does sound like there's been some not data creep, but scope creep.
No,
And-
there's no There is no scope group. There are
Okay,
two
so the
separate
downtown
things.
improvement study, we should just ignore.
Well, no, I don't think we should ignore it, but it's not part of the MAPC study at all.
Okay, so they didn't come in under that MAPC
No,
grant.
they did
Okay,
not. It's
so,
a separate thing.
all right, so the title you reference is,
I think when they say in conjunction, they just mean it's simultaneous. They were doing it around the same time that the part of the MAPC study was being done.
okay, okay.
Oh, I have a problem then with using this. But did they use the town planner at the time? Did they use the person that was on staff doing MAPC work? I mean, I have a lot of questions.
Becky, you have a comment?
I just want to comment to something, Becky, Chair of the Select Board, Jakes. I just wanted to make a clarification, if I may, Chair, to what Ms. Delicia stated about studies. I seem to feel that it implied that the planning board was the only board that could request studies and get studies done. That is not the case by any stretch of the imagination. So many boards and committees can request studies because a lot of the studies do not necessarily fall under the direct purview of the planning board. So just, I don't know if that was your intent, but that's how I perceived it. And I just wanted to make that clarification that studies do not just fall under the planning board. Thank you,
I
Chair.
don't think I stated that. My concern is that there was two simultaneous parking studies going on at the same time, which the planning board had no knowledge of this downtown improvement. So this is a big concern of mine.
My concern is we're getting off topic. We're talking about the MAPC parking study and what our comments are on it, not the scope of the downtown improvement study and whatever they did. Many thanks to them for what, for their efforts. I'm not prepared tonight to go back and revisit the MAP study because I looked at it the night that it was presented to us. It was fresh in my mind then. I would need to go back and re-comment. So I would suggest we put this off and either send comments to Betsy or do it in person. But I don't think it's a productive use of our time to go back and try to analyze what the downtown improvement committee might have done as a separate effort.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'm happy to, I did send some comments to Betsy. If it's helpful, I could just quickly summarize them and maybe that would help people focus their thoughts about the study. If that's helpful or
Maybe you want to hold off till we discuss it, maybe next meeting.
that's
That's
fine.
my thought. So,
I'm happy to share them in the folder for next meeting. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and I know the high level one I did when they presented last time was that one of the outcomes that they wanted to do with the study was recommendations for the MBTA zoning, yet they're not studying the full half-mile radius from the downtown train station. So I suggested either they increase their scope or they take that data point off. That I don't think they can make recommendations if they're not looking at.
That was my big complaint. That was my big comment, is I think that they said that they were gonna have goals for the MBTA 3A study and the scope of their work doesn't allow them to. And given that we haven't yet decided what we're gonna do for our 3A compliance, it would be hard for them to know, to predict the future. So I think I think I agree with Mary that the scope of their work, that there wasn't a goal that was achievable.
will the 2 weeks be enough time for them to get back to us on our comments?
Probably.
Okay.
And can we just state for the record that MAPC refused to provide the data that they collected? Is that true, Betsy?
They had apparently some raw data, which they didn't feel was. They've processed it. They're transportation engineers.
Okay, I just clarifying that they refused to provide the data that we paid $20-some thousand.
I can ask them again.
Okay. So the next topic, 30 minutes, was the retreat. So we had scheduled a retreat last month. Canceled it for a couple of reasons. But in any case, I'd like to reschedule a retreat. I'd like to have complete board attendance at it. And I'd like to ask the board items that they feel important to accomplish at the retreat and what the expectations are. We set an agenda. I met with Sylvia, Peter Schwab, Petersdorp, and Sue Beckman. Sylvia has expertise in governance and town government. She interviewed most of us about how to, I guess, a couple of years ago, about how to make the board better. So I thought she'd be a good facilitator. But I'm opening up to the board on, you know, what we want to do at the retreat and what our expectations should be. Any comments? Sarah.
So I attended, I was gonna bring this at the end of the meeting, but I attended a workshop. It was the running municipal meetings workshop. I think everybody heard about. And there were two suggestions there from Stowe and Deerfield about there was a code of conduct that one of the towns had, which I thought would be interesting to discuss at a retreat, as well as guidelines for public input. And I thought that would also be a good model to discuss, because we have this zoning and the task force and coming up, and I'm sure there will be a lot of people who want to have public input. So how do we make that productive? And I know we've talked about procedures, but the two, I mean, I can share from that meeting. I can actually share the link to that running municipal meetings webinar. I got it as a follow-up, but it was interesting, and I thought those two documents would be good agenda items for a retreat.
Okay. Any other comments?
So I think that can be part of a bigger discussion about just basic operations of the planning board, how we conduct meetings and how, I guess, regulations and how we sort those out. And Betsy had done a pretty good job, I thought, of breaking them up into different topics that we could talk about. And just sort of generally how we conduct our business.
We started to talk last time about the possibility of having alternates, particularly for site plan review or when some of these longer duration projects come up. So I'd be interested in talking about the possibility of alternates and it's site plan review. If we get, you know, the general, if it's section 12 passed, thinking about how to make the most robust process around site plan review and special permit review that we can.
Area of Christina. Okay. Yeah, I think those are all good ideas. If we can kind of get them into the agenda somehow. I think we would like to hold this retreat after the election of April election or May election, and then we'll have our retreat then. If we have a lot on our plate to get done between now and town meeting. That would be my idea. Any thoughts on that? Certainly it earlier. Okay, thanks. So, it's the public hearing isn't scheduled to
Few minutes.
7. I'd like to move some things around. Just a reminder to the board that you need to take your conflict of interest training. Deadline is March 16th. It's an online course. I think it runs about an hour. And then after you take it, you need to open another module that says you've taken it. And so make sure you get those two pieces done. The next item I have to talk about is regular meeting minutes. We have November 9th, November 28th, and December 12th. Any comments on the minutes?
Yes. I have just a handful of typos.
Okay.
Do you want me to
Gail is with
just-
us. so-
I only had 2 meeting minutes in my, November 9th and November 28th.
Dave, I only had two.
Which one was missing?
I just had November 9th and November 28th.
Correct.
Okay. Gail, any idea on 12/12?
It was not posted in a timely manner. I will post it for the next meeting.
Thank you. Okay, on 11/9 and 11/28. Start with 11/9.
Do you want me to just say them now?
Yeah,
Can we
have
just
time.
approve them subject here to fixing the typos?
I have a typo on November 28th. Maybe it's the same as Mary has.
What is it?
Like me to go, I have only have one.
Yeah.
On November 28th, and then the typo has a, the word has a meaning change, so, there's twice that I saw that. The word slopped with 2 Ps was, typed in place of sloped. So I just wanted to correct that since it has a meaning change.
So if you want to forward your comments to Gail. And if they're
They're
typos,
typos, yeah.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, and I'm gonna. Pass along here, and on November 9th, I was not present, so. I didn't-
So with that in mind, could I have a motion to approve based on?
Move that we approve the minutes of November 9th, subject to typo fixing that Mary's gonna provide.
Is there a second?
Second. I do have a question. Did not participate in the special permit, so my vote will be subject to my abstaining from that portion of the minutes. I don't know how do I approve the minutes if I wasn't if I wasn't there for part of
hmm,
well, hopefully the meeting.
And it
they'll
say you
count-
were
they'll
there for
count.
the meeting, but you
Yeah.
recused yourself from that discussion.
from that.
Okay.
I don't think we need your vote to pass the right, so.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstained because I wasn't there.
2 abstain-
Oh, 2 abstentions.
For number 9. For November 9th.
November 9th.
Yeah, I simply wasn't there, that's why I was
Yeah,
abstaining.
So now I'll move that the minutes of November
November 28th.
28th be approved with the same typo fixing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So, we have 20 minutes. I was wondering if cell signaling can start maybe their presentation. I think they're out in the hall. Otherwise, we can come back in 20 minutes. I think that we moved a lot faster than I thought we would.
Well, we could talk about, in the category of things that were not on the agenda, we could summarize our discussion at the.
The recodification.
Oh,
Never mind. We thought you might want to start now, but
We could, or we
uh,
could,
But then they'd have to stop for the,
But we have a public hearing at 7, so you'd get 20 minutes,
you'd have to stop.
yeah.
So in the meantime, we can discuss another subject actually.
fine. Put me out here.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right, on recodification.
So, Chris, Mary, Chris and I met, on Thursday to talk predominantly about the, proposed, amendments, or, suggestions to the senior, housing proposed bylaw to take up at the public hearing. And I think we had, we had some healthy disagreement, and we had some proposed changes around
strengthening the, why don't you summarize them, historic?
So, actually, Mary had a good suggestion, which we've included in the language. And Betsy had, added some language about the use of, existing buildings and nonconformities and also taking into account the historic nature of some buildings and how, if that's the case, if the historic building is being converted for senior housing, that historic guidelines essentially be followed in the conversion. So basically, we've made it a little bit bigger, but didn't really change the intent too much. Language is posted on the SharePoint.
I will after this meeting.
I think
Oh,
you
it
already
is,
did.
it's there.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I might have put
When
it.
you say it's posted, is it posted?
for
in-
tonight's SharePoint.
Oh, it's in
It's on
tonight.
there,
Yeah.
Is that posted?
By Friday, well, no, it was like version changed, okay.
So I guess for the record, this conversation be not one that's reasonably anticipated. Seeing that we have a public hearing on the 27th, I think this is out of order and this should be reasonably anticipated. I don't understand why we just wouldn't put this on the agenda. I don't think it's a valid conversation to have without being on the agenda.
I think we're just being brief. We're not voting on anything. I'm curious as to what went on at the meeting. I don't see that as an issue to be briefed. Does the board feel that, you want to stop talking about it or listening?
No, I just had some input.
Excuse me?
I just had some input. My-
Yeah.
Well, can I just preface that, because I slipped back to what you're gonna say, so we had, I think Mary had raised 6 issues and we had asked her to, I think there were like 6 roughly, that she had concerns, and then she was sort of wrestling with some of your concerns, and so we suggested that she come back with specific suggestions, which may be what you're about to suggest.
No. Well, maybe, maybe partly. First I have some process questions and concerns, and then I'll talk about the bylaw. I believe we're still slated to have a public hearing on the February 27th. So I don't know when the planning board is going to be able to review the revisions and post it for the public to review in a timely fashion. So there's that concern. I did propose many different things that were not included in the revise that's posted to SharePoint, even though we did agree upon some of them. So I'm concerned about that. We unilaterally decided after the meeting that things would be included and things wouldn't. I did recommend at a high level, we split out the senior housing bylaw into senior housing and senior housing facilities, which are 2 vastly different animals. That did not fly at that meeting, but maybe it would fly at another one. I think there are 2 very different requirements, 2 very different sets of data needed to address those for zoning. So yes, so I do have the other points that I would bring up as a motion. I don't know if you want me to do that at the public hearing. But again, I don't know what's going to be posted for residents to view since we didn't vote on anything that meeting. Thus, technically, we're back at what we voted on 6 months ago.
We'll need to post the proposed changes that's in the hearing notice.
And those are in the process of being posted.
So,
What changes did we agree upon?
We didn't agree upon
They're
any changes.
drafts.
But who discussed them?
They were discussed at various meetings that have been held, and the senior housing was discussed last Thursday.
But we have to vote on the changes. We got, like, the 3 of us don't have the power to just go ahead and change it.
so let's hold, can I make a suggestion? Let's have another working session that's this week, or, where we, or hold another meeting on Tuesday, just for the purposes of discussing and voting the specific proposals that Mary's wants to bring forward. I agree that, when we left the meeting, we suggested that I thought it was gonna be on this meeting agenda. I didn't pay attention.
So I didn't pay attention. Yeah,
Just asking. for-
I know, it's my fault. So,
Do
sorry.
we,
So I think we're fine for the public hearing. The intent is the same. The public hearing notice covers the, and we can, you
we
know,
want to vote these changes, I think, how drastic are the changes?
I'm happy to talk about them now. Mary wants to. Do you have specific
I don't
proposals?
think we can vote on something that's not on the agenda.
Like, probably true. We can try that.
I can't vote, I don't, no.
So let's
We
have
can Vote
a
on them now.
working session on this.
So if you want to post another session, you just need to work around the note from, that there's a holiday coming up. So we have to put that into the equation.
How about next
Washington.
Tuesday?
So you need to post ahead of that holiday.
Yeah.
So
We'll have a working session on them with the intention of finalizing them.
I think that's last working session. I tried to call in. I was out of town last week and I was unable to participate because the link did not work. So I will be there in person, but I think the post was only for senior housing. So are we going to discuss the four completely or senior housing? What will be?
I think the only one we had talked about making substantive changes to was the senior housing,
But
Well,
maybe we
there-
should put them all
but
on.
we can put them all on. the
Yeah,
agenda.
because there was changes to the
Adult entertainment.
administration.
Yeah, I
and
think we agreed to
procedures.
stick with the adult entertainment that we, that was proposed for the
But
last
let's put them all
time.
on. We
We
should
can put them all on, yeah, that's fine.
so we would need a quorum for this working session
Yeah.
for voting
in order
purposes.
to vote.
That's right.
Is it a working session if we vote? I think it's gotta be
No,
a
I think it
meeting.
should be a voting session. I think
We'll
we
be
should
back.
push these
We'll be
forward.
back. All right,
Okay.
let's plan on Tuesday. Can people make Tuesday? How many people can make?
Which one?
Maybe. Okay. Looks like you can have a phone.
So that
Can
would
you
be
make
the
that
21st, is that the day?
Yeah.
Great.
That, the fact it's not on the agenda is my mistake, I'm sorry. You have a hand up.
This is
Oh,
As a
oh,
point of information,
yeah, sorry.
the select board will be meeting on the 21st. So there may be a conflict in rooms or something.
I mean, the people have complained about this. Can we just move to the 22nd? I really don't like conflicting with Board of Selectmen. I don't think it's right.
I think it's okay with me.
The Water Resource Task Force meeting, but I think it's this week.
It's this week.
It's this week.
20 seconds, fine.
20 seconds. Okay.
It's better than 21st. Yeah.
So
Okay, so we'll meet on the 22nd.
that's the Wednesday.
Yes.
Hopefully, there's no other meetings that day.
Or we'll, move around that. But
Any
it-
other FinCom or
No, FinCom's Thursday.
and the TBA, they meet on Wednesdays?
We don't have to meet in here.
Okay. Minutes.
So right now, there's nothing on the Manchester calendar on the 22nd.
It was the email from Bayern. about the meeting. So
Okay,
you might.
yes, so the,
And that came in on.
we got an email from Byron Pike. Looking for somebody from, the board to, sit on the Harbor Master Plan Committee. He called it something else.
Management, I think. He doesn't like the word master.
Kind of, yeah, so, want to think about putting someone on that board. I think we should wait until Susan is back with us. She's a voter. I don't know if she has any interest.
I was gonna suggest that we at least take it up at the same time we take up the 3A task force, so we kind of spread think about who's gonna be on the various, maybe look at our liaisons at the same time.
Anything else on recodification and
So just to clarify, as I understand it, the senior housing proposal is a new proposal, so that's not part of the recodification. That is a new proposal.
Well, we've
This
been,
was adult entertainment, Virginia,
yeah,
too.
we included those as sort of as one and the same.
Well, they're not. I
We
mean,
called it one and the same, whether we should have or
Well,
not.
a recodification is technically taking existing language to make it clearer, but not change the intent. So it's kind of mixing apples and oranges here, because if you're recodifying it, you're taking the existing bylaw and just making it clearer. But if you're adding new stuff, that's not
I guess we should call it zoning changes.
a zoning amendment
Yeah.
or zoning change. So just to clarify, because people might get confused with that.
Thank you. I've been trying to clarify that for years.
I guess these were presented in the fall, so I think we just need to make sure that people understand that too.
Oh, we didn't actually present them. They were to be presented.
Well, I mean, they were on the warrant.
They were on the warrant, that's right.
so are we still planning to have this March 1st special meeting with the select board on finalizing the warrant?
I think at least some member of the board needs to go to the select board meeting and tell them our recommendation.
Okay, so would.
So I'm hoping after the way I look at it is we have 4 changes that are relatively, this is my opinion, relatively contained. And then if we have our public hearing, get input, make any changes and finalize our vote that night, seems to me to be a reasonable scope of work. Given that we've talked about these things and we'll have a working session to review them. We may hear some good feedback that we want to incorporate. And then we can vote that night to move it forward to the warrant, I hope. And then one of us can go to the select board meeting and all of us or whomever, however we want to do it.
And then some kind of public engagement besides the public hearing of what we're doing, maybe something in the cricket.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
explain what we're doing.
Yeah, I think we'll just do something in the cricket to publicize the public hearing next week.
And beyond that too, what these changes mean, I think there was last meeting, there was some issues with getting the word out, but we did something.
It is an annual town meeting, so attendance. People understand that there's a meeting.
No, but what we're proposing.
So has this public hearing been submitted to the cricket?
You know, we did that last time.
So what's the,
Your public hearing has been posted to the cricket for the meeting on February 27th.
Okay, great.
It needed to run for 2 weeks. So what is in the cricket is what's at the public hearing. If you wish to change it, then we need to cancel the 27th and go to another meeting date.
No, I just misunderstood Sarah saying that we were in the process of submitting it, so that made me a little concerned. All good.
I don't think we've discussed the kind of format of the public hearing. I I think last time we had kind of that maybe a workshop with people mingling around. Is there gonna, I think it's important to have perhaps some more structure so residents can ask a question, all residents can hear, and then all residents can hear the answer. Are we gonna discuss the format?
We can put it on the agenda for next time, but the public hearing that we had last time was not the same as what was at the cafeteria. We actually, on May 20 something, we had a public hearing, it was by Zoom only. And we presented and there's actually a recording of it on the website still. So there is a, so yes, you're right, it should be a formal.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay,
idea,
thank you.
Mary. We should be thinking about.
I
that.
will pull
We might be able
together
to
slides
discuss,
for that. We can talk about that next time.
yeah, we can
So-
talk about it at the working session.
So
So I guess at the last meeting, we had talked about inviting the public to our meetings going forward, but this agenda still said public on Zoom. So is there a reason why we're not inviting the public?
I think that came from the select board, the
Should that just be taken off?
public.
Well, the legal notice states it's a public hearing.
You think about our regular meetings or the public?
Anything meeting going forward. I think
thought
March
there
1st
was,
is the,
Just the applicants were supposed to, can you clarify that?
It's up to, the chair of each board or committee to determine that up until April. There's an April date, I think it's late April, at which point, I think we go back to
So I still think having it on Zoom is valuable and just to have it just to the public, just
it'll
come in.
stay on
here.
Zoom. It's whether public may attend or
Exactly.
not. That's.
I have
the
no problem with the public coming in.
that's
here.
my only thing. Yes, we're gonna still continue to do Zoom, but I think we should not public on Zoom. And
I
many
think-
people think that they're not invited to join us in this room.
Let's make it clear the public's invited as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Okay, I have 6:59. Two more seconds. Right early. Close. Okay, 7:00. I'd like to open the continued public hearing on the special permit application for a site plan approval for Manchester Parks and Rec. This is to construct a youth athletic field with 25 parking spaces on the site of the old burn dump at 156 to 160 Pine Street. Roll call to open the public hearing, Ms. Tenney.
Here.
You're only.
Here,
Ms. Alicia. Okay, at this time, is the applicant have any comments? Cheryl or Chuck? Any additional updates?
Thank you. No, I think we've sent everything along. I am going to turn it over to Chuck and Brandon Kunkel from Weston and Sampson, but I believe we sent everything along already.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think, we have received bids on this project. So we have a low bidder when the pricing seems to be in order, and we're happy with their references. So I think we're willing to go the next step, and we're just looking for the final approval from the board.
Any issues with the board? This requires a vote, a unanimous vote of all 5 of us. So any continuing issues, or are we ready to move this, vote this?
Can I just make a comment? So there was a draft decision that was issued at the December meeting. And it requires 5 votes, so everybody here. If all 5 approve, that's great. If they're missing a vote, then it gets denied and they cannot resubmit for 2 years unless there are material and substantive changes to the application. The applicant also has the ability to withdraw without prejudice and another member of the board. So then there would be the new planning board member we then hold a public hearing. The new member would be able to vote. So that would give a little more wiggle room should there be one voter who decides to not approve the project.
Maybe I'd like to take a straw poll on the board before we move forward.
Can I ask questions before? Or?
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
And I think this is probably to Chuck. That at least in this preliminary decision that Betsy just referenced, one of the items that I guess the planning board put in was that number 8, parking may be allowed on Pine Street towards the northern end of the site towards Route 128. Our general bylaws, parking is allowed on both sides of Pine Street. So I don't know if we ever as a board discussed parking on both sides there with sight lines and the crosswalk. Could you take us through that a little bit and what the signage would be and how parking would be managed?
I guess, so I'm not 100% sure. If the bylaw suggests that there's parking on both sides of the street, we wouldn't really prevent that. I mean, the same could be said for School Street. We're happy to include additional signage, to, help people understand that, there may be parking during, field use times or, during the different timeframes, similar to like what you do in a school zone where it's, parking or, when the lights start flashing, the speed is reduced because school's in session, things like that. So, we could take a look at that. We could also discuss that with our consultants. So we have Weston and Sampson on the line tonight, but we could also, talk to other vendors about products that might be available. I'm not sure if that helps or not. I mean, there is, I'm not sure if Betsy, you can correct me, but I think we put in there in the draft decision that there were follow-up that would be required for the safety zone that with the police. So, that's something that we'll look at. And if there's additional information available at that time, then we could add to the signage.
Yeah, I mean, my obvious concern is these are little kids and I mean, like I have a big car and if I parked and a little kid was trying to get from, at the sidewalk and looking around to see if they could go or looking at the flashing light, I just don't know if we've mapped out those sight lines yet with the parking.
Well,
At least
certainly we'd have a restriction for the, based on the MUTCD guidelines, you're not supposed to have parking within, I believe it's 20, but it might be 25 feet of a crosswalk. So if we had the proper setbacks, I think that is specifically for addressing sightline issues. But I don't foresee us having a problem. We'd also have the rapid flashing beacon that we've discussed at previous times. So, I think that we have the means to address these issues.
So if I could just add something, in response to the concern about public safety, there were a couple of conditions that were added from the original draft. And those items include number 5, the applicants shall work with the Manchester Police Department and applicable town officials to conduct a traffic study with the goal of decreasing the speed limit on Pine Street in the area of the proposed field from 25 to 20 miles per hour. In the event that the reduction of speed is not allowed, all signage and other measures shall be taken into account in the a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. Number 6, site distances shall be maintained to a minimum of 250 feet from the driveway entry exit for travel speed of 25 miles per hour on Pine Street. In the event the speed limit is reduced to 20, site distance may be adjusted per Institute of Traffic Engineers to 200 feet or as specified. As may be needed, brush trimming may be required along Pine Street. Number 7, advanced signage for the rectangular rapid flashing beacon shall be provided in accordance with the manufacturer's standards and as approved by the Manchester Police Chief. Number 8, parking may be allowed on Pine Street toward the northern end of the site towards 128 shall be subject to the review and approval of the Manchester Police Chief. In all instances with the parking of vehicles on Pine Street, site distances shall be provided that meet the standard of the posted speed limit. Those 4 conditions were all added as a public safety measure.
Yeah.
If I may, thank you. Becky Jakes, Select Board Chair. Most of those items that are being discussed right now actually come under the purview of the Select Board. So rather than you all having to spend time on items that come under our purview, I think I'd just say there was some deliberation on those.
So can we put in the decision that the Select Board is responsible for those 4 items or whatever it is?
Sure.
And then we.
I don't think you can make, if I may, Ron, through you, I don't think the planning board can tell the select board what they have to do in their purview. You can make a recommendation, but it's for what comes under our purview. That's our decision as a collective board to make.
Yeah, no, I just meant that it
Why don't we
would
take
be
that?
recommendations from the
Yeah.
planning
Take it as a
board.
recommendation.
Right.
Okay, any other comments?
So I guess I had a question about, Chuck, when they reference pedestrians, can you confirm or expand upon if pedestrian include a child on a bicycle?
Was that question from, I'm not sure what the question was.
Yeah, that was question was for you. So, the traffic engineer document keeps references a pedestrian and the sight lines for a pedestrian. Is that the same as a child or someone on a bicycle?
So the sightline that in question is when they're exiting the park at the crosswalk for crossing of Pine Street. So do you mean like if there's a child riding a bike
So
across?
that there's like the
the-
stop times based on 25 miles for this, the sight lines need to be this person's gonna stop based on a pedestrian. I mean, the language says pedestrian. I just want to confirm that that also includes someone.
Well, I
on a
think
bike.
in this sense, a pedestrian would be somebody that's on their bike or anybody utilizing the crossing. So whether they're on a bike or pushing their bike or crossing the road, that's, the sight line is the approaching traffic and their distance away from seeing that person or that pedestrian or that bicyclist in the crossing.
Like, I just wanted to make sure, like, the average speed of someone walking is a little different than someone riding a bike. I just wanted to make sure that we were just crossing all our Ts on that.
Rebecca?
This is again something under the purview of the select board. Thank you, Chair.
I'm not sure that the sight lines of this are.
Okay, so, Laura.
Thank you. Chuck, and to the Weston Sampson team, last time we spoke about the plans, there was a question that I had raised about returning the fence across the parking to prevent balls from rolling in our cars and things just getting kicked or rolled in that direction. I was wondering how that got resolved or what the current thinking was there.
So I defer to you on that one, Brandon, sorry.
Yeah, sure. Currently, the plan does not call for a fence to be put in between the field and the parking lot. It can always be added if desired. The group of people and the age group of people playing on this field, we typically would not see, the intensity of play that would typically, consistently, I guess, kick balls towards a parking lot. And I guess I'll leave it at that.
Leo. No.
And what's the setback of the field to the parking?
I'm gonna actually ask at this point in time, my colleague Melissa, if she's able to share a plan. To be honest, I don't have the exact dimension off the top of my head.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing, so if I can't share, I can measure it for you and let you know, Brandon.
Yeah, I guess if you could
Able to
quickly
share.
do
Should
a
be able to
measurement.
share now.
No, let me try. No, I still can't. Let me measure it and I'll get back to you.
Let's make a point while we're waiting, because, can I just make a point on this
Yeah, while
while
we're
we're
waiting.
waiting? Yeah, just probably to Betsy that, on page 3, it's a public hearing and it says, in attendance, and it lists Sarah Crichton, but she's not, she's recused herself.
Mhm.
They don't know how to do that.
So the measurements are, it's a range from the edge of the field to the parking lot. It's like a minimum of like 16 feet to a maximum of like 70 feet from where the field lines would be to the parking lot.
70 feet. I don't remember seeing 70 feet.
70 would be an issue.
Yeah. And is there a recommended runoff from the edge of the field for play of this age?
Typically, it's 10 feet.
10 feet runoff, yeah. Okay. I mean, I defer to the experts here in the layout of the requirements of the field and the runoff of the field and the safe distance to the cars. I know there's logistical constraints about where you can put foundations for the fencing. It might be considered as an ad alternate for the play, just in case it does become necessary. It might be useful to at least provide for the possibility of the fence line being installed. Maybe the footing gets installed or just provisions for the fence in an ad alternate in case there is a concern that that arises about sort of play creeping off of the fields and balls migrating towards the car in the parking lot. That was my other question. Thank you.
Sure, I'll just say I'll be working with and Nate, when he gets back, we'll be working with the contractor in Weston and Sampson on submittals and layout. So, it'll be a standard process there, and we can consider adding those if we feel it's necessary once we, see things laid out in the
Yeah,
field.
after you see the layout in the field, perhaps, and evaluate it. Okay, thanks, Chuck.
So do you want that as an additional condition?
It would be a recommendation to evaluate upon layout in the field, to evaluate the need for a fence separating the area of play from the parking lot.
Any other comments from the board? So I'd like to take a straw poll because this would set them 2 years behind. You don't vote this through and they could maybe use other means. Laura, straw poll on approval.
I'm supportive of it. It's a need identified in the master plan. It's a appropriate location, and so I think they've done their homework on it, and I support the plan.
There's only
I'm in-
comments on
I'm
a
in
straw
favor.
poll. Christine Delizio, comments?
I am in favor. I just wanted to, I was trying to see in this decision which flashing beacon they were going with. And then I just wanted to find the maintenance. Because obviously the one at the corner of my street does not work, so. I'd like to make sure that the beacon is being maintained.
Yeah, we won't know until the contractor submits the actual device that they intend to install. But I'm confident that we will be able to utilize whatever they gets approved during the shop drawing process.
Ms. Foley, your comments on approval or no, or shortfall?
Yes.
Okay, with that in mind, I'd like to take a motion to approve the special permit. It's seconded.
Yeah, I'll second it with the conditions, with the decision as revised this evening.
Any additional comments?
Are we taking any public comment?
We could, but I think we did already. This has been sitting around since November. Yes, go ahead.
I think the fence question was a very valid one, and I don't know how you police what age group uses these fields, so to say it's a certain age group that's gonna be using it, and therefore we only don't need this fence, or we can set back, I think is naive that over time, we might have younger kids, if that's which is the concern, right? So I would absolutely insist on some sort of separation between traffic activities regardless of whether age group is supposed to be.
Could we have your name and address for the record?
Jonathan Keith, 8 Victoria Road, Manchester.
So I would just add a comment to that, because it does say that in the summer, it's open to all for use, so I guess we wouldn't know what age groups are using it. I guess that's a valid point to consider.
Rebecca Jakes.
Rebecca Jakes, 22 Forster Road. In all the various meetings, I thought that it was said that these were not full-size fields. So doesn't that kind of limit the use and how?
Maybe Cheryl, can you give us some insight on the use?
Yes, it is a small sided field, so it's about half the size of a full field. So it is, being built for the smaller children, but during off times, will bigger kids be on it? We're not going to be there to tell them not to. So yes, it will be open to the public also. So if adding that fence that at least goes, wraps around the corner, I'm sure we can put that in as an add-on. So at least if it goes from the corner to, say 15 feet from the parking lot, that area, I'm sure we can look at that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now that Sarah Pierce, you have your hand up.
Hi, yes, Sarah Pierce, 9 Front Street, Manchester. I just wanted to ask, I frequently walk the Pleasant Pine Street loop and notice that the traffic that goes from 128 to the village on Pine Street sometimes doubles the actual speed limit that is posted. Are you taking any sort of extra precautions to monitor the speed limits that are going to be happening through there? Because several times, people are going so fast, you feel like you're on 128. So, and I also just wondered, like, considering this is a playing field, is it considered a satellite school space, or is it town field, but is it like school speed limits? Or I know you mentioned 20 miles an hour.
So again, that'll be the purview of the select board.
Okay, so that'll be in a separate meeting that'll be posted.
Rebecca, I'll let Rebecca answer that.
If I may, to the chair, thank you. Becky Jakes, Select Board Chair. Yes, Sarah, this actually has been discussed several times. And I agree with you in terms of the speed on a number of our roads. But yes, this is being addressed. in terms of the fields, that would have to go to Cheryl Marshall. But the speed and handling of that has been discussed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
May I comment?
yes, your name and address.
I'm John Gaithwaite. I live on 155 Pine Street, diagonally across from the field. I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion of the speeding, and I get a lot of stories, and 50 miles an hour is common. I mean, I jog every morning and I live there and I try to pull out of my driveway and it's bad and it's not well enforced. So if you're counting on enforcement, think again. But I came tonight because I happened to notice in 7.5 of the zoning bylaws, I believe, talks about wildlife habitat. I know my wife has brought this up in previous meetings, but it is a serious wildlife habitat. And in fact, there's a deer run that goes through my yard and across there. And the deer frequently go there to get water. And not too long ago, we had another deer strike right in front of my house, speeding car, young woman on her phone. And it's not the first deer strike. So, and, you know, I walked through that land many times. There's all kinds of other critters living there, butterflies and other wildflowers, things like that. So I was wondering if you took into consideration at all as a wildlife habitat in your.
No, it wasn't brought up.
Well, it had been brought up quite a while in the past. Question I couldn't get to.
Noticed an accident and one involved a deer, but that was the only one that came up through the parking engineering report.
No, this was a very recent one. In fact, it was the second time when I told the officers, asked the officers if they could put one of the
Deer signs.
electronic radar speed signs further up where people come off of 128. And they said they'd write it up. They didn't. I've been down the station. The dispatcher said they'd look at it and it never happened. They put a radar sign further down, almost before you get to the flashing red light that did absolutely no good whatsoever.
So
to
on
slow
speeding,
people down.
that's up to the select board. So I'm gonna,
Okay.
we're
Well,
not,
I'm
it's not
just,
in our
I'm just
purview,
saying
so I'm
that
gonna
this
try
is,
to, I'm trying to move on here. I got a presentation, but
Okay.
I understood.
Can
Thank you,
I, Ron, may I ask? Sorry.
Laura.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to respond briefly to the wildlife habitat comment, because Nate and I and others were part of the discussion, but we did talk about, we changed the planting plan from what was originally shown to, improve screen of our arborvitae to a mix of native deciduous and coniferous trees. We talked about saving the wooded edge. Obviously sight lines are the required sight lines will be there, but preserving the wooded edge at the edge of Pine Street, and then everything that's outside of the work zone will not be touched. So partly because of the, requirements of the landfill that's underneath it, and in an effort to preserve the rest of the vegetation that's on the site. So appreciate the comment. We did work on, the selection of the planting palette.
well, we made an attempt to address it, so that's a partial answer, but I don't think the deer are gonna be happy crossing through the parking lot in the open field. There's no force, there's no shelter.
Okay, thank you for
That's
your
all.
comments. Mary.
Cheryl, was there any wildlife study done on this site? I don't recall seeing it.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Sandy, you have your hand up. You identified.
Yep, Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. It's interesting because I also had a comment on the wildlife. I don't know if it was brought up regarding lighting on the field. I've actually gone there to do some bird watching and stuff like that. So it's more than just deer. There's lots of different kinds of wildlife there. Has there been an effort in the design to mitigate lighting, both for wildlife purposes and for the neighborhood regarding how the field will be lit. A bit concerned sometimes is, you know, I don't know where our,
Not gonna be lit.
what?
I don't believe it's gonna be lit.
Lighting.
It's not going to be lit? Okay,
No.
that's good.
No,
So that means we're limiting the amount of use, you know, when the time changes happen, when things get dark. The other question I had was, is there going to be posted the type of activity that can happen there? I know earlier there was interest in a, you know, sort of a biking park and things like that. I don't know how deep the field can get wrecked in bad weather where you're exposing anything from below. Are you covering it with something? So in case there are some activities that happen that aren't planned, that we're protecting everybody? That's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Brandon, I'll let you have that one.
Sure. So there, I guess, I'm not sure what you mean by protecting everyone. I'm not sure if that's related to the landfill below. And if that's the case, the answer is yes. There's a demarcation barrier in place now. We actually don't intend to impact the demarcation barrier other than, you know, we're doing work above it. And so the demarcation barrier is intended to stay intact. We have protocols in place. Should it be damaged, obviously it would have to be repaired or replaced. Should it come in contact, but the intent is to provide minimally 12 inches of all clean material above the demarcation barrier, if that's what your question is referring to from a safety perspective of users.
Yeah, I, you know, I trust that when you're developing the field, you're being very careful. I was just thinking about like people going in there and using their bikes and digging big, like a big hole in there, and then, you know, that somehow it's marked that can't sort of happen. That's all. Just some thoughts to think about, and I'm glad that the field is not going to be lit. Thank you.
Mhm.
Follow-up question for John.
Okay, at this. Go ahead.
Did you express your concern on Zoom? Or, I mean, I know on Zoom you don't see faces, I just don't recognize the comment. And I didn't know if you wrote in, I just wanted to make sure.
I've been following this since, I don't know, it's been a couple of years when they were debating where the park was gonna go and all that kind of thing.
I mean, I think this is I just want to make sure that we received your comment. Did you write into the board?
Planning board being involved in the meetings, in the past, most of them were either selectmen meetings or special meetings. I don't recall, could get back to you, I'll ask my wife, she keeps.
No, I said, I don't remember your comment, and I usually remember people's faces, and
Yeah,
you may have been
on
on
the commission this
screen
summer
on the
as well,
Zoom.
so I missed those meetings.
I just want to make sure that we didn't miss your comment.
Okay, no other comments? I'd like to take this time to close the public hearing and vote. Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Discussion.
So you need a second.
Second,
Second,
roll call. Mary,
To close it? Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
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 Chair votes yes. Okay, at this time, I'd like to take a motion to,
Have the motion on the table.
yes, I think I made it, Chris seconded.
Yeah.
okay, and it's been seconded.
Yeah.
Roll call vote, Mary,
Come back to me, please.
Laura,
Yes,
Chris,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Mary?
Wildlife one is that this is a new issue that we haven't discussed. It's kind of giving me whiplash here a little bit. I don't know that we fully vetted that. Or at all. I'm gonna vote yes.
The chair votes yes, unanimous, permit granted. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to have the folks from Cell Signaling Technologies come in and yeah, could you have them come in? They are going to give us a preliminary proposal on what they plan to do up at the limited commercial district. They brought in some of their experts. They have material for us to look at. Hello, so introduced you as Cell Signaling Technologies to give the board a preliminary presentation on your plans up at the limited commercial district. Could you introduce your team and give us a little preamble, Mark?
I will do that. Is this table available? Is this table available to you?
Yes, go ahead.
I can help you with that. Thank you. Use your table too. So before we get started, I just want to thank the planning board, the board of selectmen, and Greg Fetishfield, but particularly Sarah Creighton and Gary Gilbert, because if we hadn't had the cooperation of the town last year, we would not have been here tonight, because the zoning changes that were enacted opened the door that gave us an opportunity that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to take. So thank you for the time you spent with us a year ago. I also want to acknowledge Michael Combs, who's here, who probably isn't going to have a speaking role, but Cell Signaling looked at numerous sites in the North Shore in its effort to find a location for a new campus, and spent a couple of years doing that. And ultimately, it was Michael who decided that, notwithstanding the Atwater Avenue site being compromised, that because of his interest in the environment and his being a Manchester resident, he was willing to make certain sacrifices in order to try to make Atwater Avenue work. And so that's another reason why we're here tonight.
Yeah, we looked at a number of other properties that would have been much more destructive. This was a good compliment.
But it's also a short commute for him. Last summer, last July, Cell Signaling through its affiliates acquired the property off Atwater Avenue, which consists essentially of two parcels. One is a 40-acre parcel that was the former Florey site, and the other is 8.5, 9 acres that is used in conjunction with the Manchester Athletic Club. And another decision that Michael made for the benefit of the town, but also for the benefit of Cell Signaling, was to restore the MAC. The MAC needed an injection, and it was not going to be a profit-making operation for Cell Signaling. But Cell Signaling decided that it was the right thing to do, notwithstanding the fact that it could have been a fairly significant component of the campus development. So for the foreseeable future, there will be an athletic club on the 49 acres. The other thing that happened after the acquisition was a national competition to choose an architectural firm for this project.
It was very competitive. And ultimately, Hamel Green Abrahamson, HGA, was selected for all the right reasons. And Samir Sarucci is the architect from HGA who's been working on the development of the plans. And he will take you through a PowerPoint presentation momentarily. In addition to Samir, he elected to ask Michael Van Valkenburg Associates, MVVA, represented by Chris Matthews, to be the landscape architectural firm to work with HGA in designing the cell signaling campus. Tonight, we're here on an informal basis with the product of their hard work. We promised you when we were working on the zoning change that prior to filing, we would come in and make an informal presentation. We've also been keeping regular contact with towns people. We have a representative from the Board of Selectmen that we've been talking to on a regular basis. Chuck Dam has now joined us in an effort to make sure that we identify potential problems and address them early in the development of the prospective development of the site. We would anticipate probably within the next few months of filing a special permit application for site plan approval. Thanks to the hard work of Chris and Samir, there are very little exceptions from the dimensional requirements that will be necessitated by the plans that have been put together, as you will see. And even though the zoning changes that you enacted provided for reduction of side yard setback and other things by special permit, in order to have a better site design, we're not going to need to take advantage of those opportunities, except with respect to one small amount of surface parking, which Samir will explain to you. So before Samir and Chris get started, I'd like Craig Thompson, who's here with us, who's the Senior Vice President for Global Operations of Cell Signaling, to give you a little bit of a explanation as to what Cell Signaling is doing and what it intends to do with this project.
May I start sharing? I gave you permission, yes.
I was going to have Craig.
Yeah, he has a slide to talk to.
Oh,
so if-
okay. You want to take my seat?
I can take that temporarily. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. So on behalf of CST, I want to certainly thank the board here for giving us some time. We're actually very, very excited to be here and begin to share with you what we have in mind. As many of you may be aware, CST has been around for almost 25 years now. And one thing that hasn't changed really in that 25 years is our scientific mission. And that is to enable scientists to better understand biology, and by doing so, enable personalized medicine. Here on the North Shore, we develop and manufacture products that scientists all over the world use on a daily basis. And this allows them to better understand diseases and disease biology for many diseases that commonly afflict us, including cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease. And it's through a better understanding of disease that it ultimately enables scientists to develop better therapies and therefore improve human lives. We've been extremely fortunate here on the North Shore to be very successful. The demand for our products continues to increase, and we're very proud of our mission and what we've been able to accomplish so far. It does mean, though, that we need to expand our facilities. We're rapidly outgrowing or have outgrown those facilities that we have in Beverly and Danvers, and we do need to expand. But just as important as our scientific mission, we also, are very proud of the Combe family, the CST employees, and certainly myself, are proud of our other values in terms of support of the community, both local and more broadly, and our commitment to sustainability. And I think what you're going to see tonight, from Samir and Chris is a plan, a proposal that brings all those together. It will meet our scientific needs for expanded space to deliver more products to our customers around the world. It will enable us to attract and retain the best scientists in the world as well, to come work up here in Manchester and develop those products for the customers that want them so badly. And we're developing a site that is heavily integrated into the community, including the MAC and other parts of it that you'll hear about to help support the community. And it will be what we truly believe is a flagship for sustainability when it comes to life sciences. We're going to take a blighted site, restore it, and build a highly sustainable facility that we strongly believe will be, something that other life science companies will look towards us, as something to emulate. And it's something we're very proud of, and I know that Michael and the family are very proud of that as well, in terms of all those things we want to accomplish. So with that, I will turn it over to Samir and to Chris to tell you more about what we have in mind.
Thank you, Craig. So what you just heard is actually an architect's dream to take a project that is transforming an old quarry into a new campus for life science research, and summarizing what we took from Craig's description of the mission of the company is that they are as committed to the environment as they are to the excellent science and products that they produce, and committed to integrating into the community. So in our submission, which happened last summer, that was the key thing that we focused on, and we said architecture and landscape can actually address these. So the goals for the project is to create this innovative campus for the future, I don't know how many years, but the future of CST. And the site offers a unique opportunity with the sort of existing granite cliff, great views out towards the hills beyond. And the mission was to meet net zero for both the building and the site. That's not an easy task, and we're going to know more about it. But definitely the goal. And then the fostering the well-being of the employees is key in our thinking about design, and it drives perfectly with the culture that Michael and CSD is trying to achieve. I would mention from the team, we have over 20 consultants on this, top of the kind of line, very knowledgeable and capable consultants. I'll mention two. Michael van Valkenburg, represented here by Chris, are world-renowned landscape architects that we've worked with before, and BR+A. BR+A are one of the also very well-known mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers, and we're teamed with them on several projects that really push the envelope on environmental issues, including energy. Together, we got the Code Top 10 award for our MIT project, MIT Nano that some of you know. Let's see, page down, page up.
Are we blocking the view of the screen?
You know what's blocking actually, the smaller zoom window, isn't it?
Oh, you know what? You minimize that?
I minimize it.
Because the small bar was three small bars on the top of the screen. Yeah, you touched it. I think it's at the Zoom commander's level.
No, I don't want to exit.
There we go. So this is the site, definitely a scarred landscape. That is what we would call a post-industrial quarry, and surrounded, this is the Manchester Athletic Club.
It's the gallery view of the screen. Your screen there, you got a small
Yeah.
pad. at the
Yeah.
top. Yeah, you can
Slide it up. Where are the younger people?
By the way, this facility here is an abutter and actually for us, presents a sort of a problem that visually to screen it so that the development is improved and that's hidden. This is a first look at what the proposed campus might look like. Of course, the buildings in the current view are just matching the master plan phase, so if they're by no means they are a design, but it is the idea of creating a campus, a parking garage that is being put on the table with a loop road around, and we'll get into more details of the components of the master plan. This is the view looking towards Boston. Boston is out there in the horizon. This is 128, of course, and the MAC, Manchester Athletic Club. And you can see so much of this has been disturbed land for the operation of the quarry. And the proposal is to restore all that and use it as a campus. This is just the view from that side. Along the edge, we're trying to berm up and plant to shield visually as much as possible the abutter industrial property right here. The buildings are actually cascading over the cliff. So part of the buildings in the campus would be sitting high up on the what we call the upper meadow, and they will cascade down and terrace towards the lower part. That becomes a sort of a quad and a garden, a quarry garden for the campus. The property is 48 acres. A lot of it will be left as preserved forest. There's 29 acres maintained. The reddish zone is 19 acres, and that's what we're calling the development. Development is less than that immediately, but we are restoring a bit of the east side. So we will be touching that area to restore it. And with that, I pass it on to Chris to talk about the.
Thanks, Samir. It's a little bit far away from my reading glasses.
Yep. Thanks so much for the report, by the way.
Great, so this is the illustrative master plan that we've been working on now for the last 6 months. Really identifying the major components of the project, and it is just a master plan at the moment. As Samir mentioned, the buildings are just massing at the moment, and I would say the landscape too is here for illustrative purposes, but it certainly identifies the key components of the scheme. So first of all, you'll notice that the Manchester Athletic Club is untouched. They will go on operating as they do now. And we are using the existing main entrance that comes up on the north side of the MAC into the quarry area as our main entrance. New plantings and reducing some of the asphalt, but you'll come in the same way as you do right now. And then proceed up an existing track to what we call the upper meadow, which is where the main entrance, the drop-off area is, the lobby for the building. And you can see that the building is split into 2 phases. Phase 1 on the right-hand side would be built along with the lobby, and then phase 2 on the left-hand side would follow a few years later. We have a loop driveway that connects all the main elements of the project. That will be used for employees arriving at work and leaving, for service, but also very importantly, it would be a public driveway that leads to a new trailhead with parking, and the public will be invited in to the campus, and will be able to access all the trails in the woods to the north. We do have a garage which will serve both phase 1 and phase 2. It's 4 floors, and we've tucked it down into the low area of the quarry so that it's low profile in sight and surrounded by new evergreen trees and landscape. We have, as Samir mentioned, berms along the north side of the site, which would serve to screen our neighbors. Why is that? I think I just did the wrong.
Just
Okay,
moving
good.
on, yeah.
So zooming in.
Use the paint.
Yeah, zooming in here. So in terms of infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure, we're trying to minimize what we call, gray infrastructure, underground concrete pipes, and do it through green infrastructure, so visible stormwater components in the landscape itself. So you can see the swale just tucked in there between the buildings, which will collect rainwater from the building roofs and paved areas, and will guide that water down towards a series of rain gardens to slow down the stormwater flow and to clean up the water before it's released into Sawmill Brook. And Charlie Weir from Hancock will be talking in more detail about the sustainability aspects of that plan. You'll notice that the existing woodland remains untouched, and we've really concentrated the new development in the 19 acres of post-industrial land or previously disturbed land. And as Samir mentioned, we're restoring part of that, planting it with meadow as a possibility for future development and future buildings what am I?
Page down.
Oh, okay. All right. Wrong button.
Not intuitive.
Okay, got it. Page down. So yeah, this highlights the different types of landscape, both that we see on site at the moment and our approach to the campus design. So there is an extensive existing woodland on site, shown here as number one. It's beautiful. There are trails there already that people use. They have to run the gauntlet of the quarry of the industrial operation that's going on out there right now, but we'll be providing parking and new trails to access that area. The meadow planting shown here in yellow consists of that future area where we'll be cleaning up the quarry and sort of random piles of material, loaming it, planting wildflower meadow, as well as restoring the meadow up on top, which is really beautiful and is shown here in the photo down below. The campus landscape, as I mentioned, will be on the previously disturbed site, and the Manchester Athletic Club will be undisturbed. So just zooming out a little bit, this shows you how this can become an important access point for the monoliths, formerly known as the Agassiz Rocks, I think, owned by the trustees, and we will be providing both trails from the MAC parking lot, but also new parking here at the trailhead with pathways that will connect through to that. And you can see there's 15 parking spaces in our plan. This little plan on the right-hand side that will be open to the public. Okay, I did that again. Yeah, and just to overlay the proposed plan on that, the public will be able to walk throughout the campus, but these are the primary access points for the trail, and we've been thinking about, maybe perhaps creating a gathering place on top of the hill. That's sort of interesting. I think ad hoc activities would be the polite way of putting it, but sort of making a beautiful place where people can gather and do something other than drink beer. So to Mark's point, the one detail that we would be asking for relief through the special permit is a series of parking spaces up near the arrival and entrance lobby. So I'm going to get the language wrong, but the sort of base condition is surface parking should be behind the 200-foot setback, and we have many hundreds of spaces that conform to that. These particular 22 parking spaces do cross the 200-foot setback, which I believe through a special permit we're allowed to do. Actually, we're allowed to go much closer to the property line. And the reason for this is because the driveway leading to the meadow is too steep for parking. So we come up very quickly from the MAC to the upper meadow. And then when we can flatten out the driveway, so where it can be both used as parking, but it's also ADA accessible, so universally accessible. That's where we're putting these spaces. And so a few of these spaces will be for ADA parking spots. A few of them will be for drop off and pickup. But that's the I think the totality of what we're asking relief on. And when viewed from Route 128, because of its elevated position, the roadway and the cars won't be visible. And Samir has some material that will explain that. So the project and the building will be built in 2 phases. This is the extent of the first phase. So you can see the right-hand side of the building, the lobby, the loop driveway, half of the garage. And then critically, the access to the public trailhead. So that would be one of the very first things that we do. So the public will be able to use that. They'll be able to walk around the site. And then in phase 2, we have 2 discrete areas that would be fenced off. The campus would operate undisturbed, and the public access would be undisturbed. And that's when we build the western side of the building, complete the quarry garden, and complete the garage.
So as I mentioned, the kind of goal of net zero development, both on the building and on the site, is a challenge. But this is a summary of what we're thinking of achieving to get there. CST has also asked us to certify at least gold for LEED, but we're likely going to get to platinum, or at least we're going to push towards that. We're going to use LEED 0, which is kind of a newer LEED certification, and of course, WELL. The different features that are incorporated and will be part of this is the solar photovoltaics, definitely on top of the garage, but maybe integrated into the building as well to maximize the area. We will increase the visibility and transparency in transient space. It's not where people are sitting all the time, so the heat gain issue is not much of a problem, but we do want, for creating the culture that CST needs, we want people to look outside and enjoy nature, and for people to see each other working on a campus. But having those in an areas that are not exposing us to heat gain is important. Horizontal shades and overhangs on the south facade, to minimize the same issue of heat gain and glare. And then we're going to use ground source heat pump in a closed loop. That would primarily be within the bottom of the quarry. And we're thinking that that would serve full development, phase 1 and phase 2. Indoor and outdoor connection is key. So possibilities to exit the building at the different levels, out to the meadow, down to the quarry garden. And as you can see, the buildings in general, again, not designed, but they're terracing to traverse that about 40 feet of elevation difference between the upper meadow and the lower base. Biophilic design of bringing nature in and connection from the building outside is key to our thinking. And higher SRI roof to minimize heat absorption. All of these are key to kind of getting the certification, but also in addition to what is required, bird safe glass. Wherever we have good expanses of glass, we'll be making sure to specify bird safe. Access to daylight and views is very important to the well-being of people, as well as connected spaces vertically and horizontally. So walking, seeing all your peers and where they work and being able to connect with them is part of this, achieving this culture of collaboration. Stormwater management is a big part of our thinking. And here I would like to ask Charlie from Hancock to tell us about what the pieces that we're looking at.
I think it's worth, mentioning what, what are we protecting? The land to the north is owned by the trustees. Sawmill Brook, which is an important an important resource for the town, runs right to the west of the property, especially down here, down there. And to the north, which is.
They just appear on the screen.
It's just-
Point it out where it
yeah,
is.
that's what we do. So that's to the north, now, the Sawmill Brook is actually a cold water fishery, it has smelts and actually trout come up in this area. And to the north and the Trustees is the Beaver Dam Swamp. So those are all the resources that we're really looking to protect and enhance. The site today is not protecting or enhancing those at all. It's a source of sediment, source of pollutants that come from the site. So even if we did just the planting, which is Chris's work, just that planting is going to be a huge improvement to the site. But we're required as part of this project to meet the Mass DEP stormwater management standards. But beyond that, we're going to do a lot more than just meet the standards. We're going to be LEED certified. As Samir mentions, we'll be looking at the LEED requirements are above and beyond Mass DEP requirements. Not that there's anything wrong with Mass DEP requirements, they're very good. They don't incorporate things like future climate change. They also are more rigorous on removal of phosphorus, for example. We're proposing, as I mentioned at the bottom of this picture, we're proposing two ponds. One is a rain garden, the other one's probably an infiltration basin. And then reaching out from that along the front of the building, you can see there's some blue in there. That will be a series of, it's really a water quality swale or a series of actually smaller rain gardens. We're still working on, as Samir mentioned, his buildings are still a work in progress. The stormwater is also a collection of ideas. We've been developing models around this over the last few months, but we're really starting to get our head into it. There'll also be some, there likely will be some subsurface infiltration basins on the site, under the roadways or under the burn, for example. And whatever else we need, we sometimes use Ford Technic units and things of that nature. So all of those things are on the table. I think that's, I'll try to wrap that up and get it back to these guys.
In continuing the different aspects of the building and the site that will help us achieve that goal, we're looking very closely at the embodied carbon in the material choices. So we're thinking of mass timber structure for parts of the building. We've done this on different lab buildings. Labs don't like mass timber too much because of rating and control areas for chemical quantities and things. So we use that mass timber in areas like the lobby and the circulation spine within the building, but a transition to steel and concrete. And we're looking into concrete that is low carbon mixes as well. Of course, steel, the same. And healthier materials across the board. There's plenty of lists that we adhere to, red list of materials, Harvard developed another list that we're and actually CST's lead sustainability person comes from Harvard, so he knows that what we're supposed to use and not. And EV charging is a must nowadays. It's not like already we count the number of cars at CST's campus that need it. We'll definitely be looking to maximize those. And from all this, what we hope to bring across is this idea that it is turning this quarry into a campus that is walkable, pedestrian friendly. It attracts people. There's a big competition, and I'm sure my hope wants scientists to come here and be wild and excited to come and work at this place with
athletic facilities nearby, easy to walk around, take a stroll. So this, what drives all of this is not just checking what is required from architects. It is really coming together holistically to create a place that everybody in CFD and the town will be proud of. Now, specifically on the zoning envelope for the height, we have been studying tons of options, and every time we have to run the average grade calculation. It's complicated because we're sitting up high and down low, and we have one person, her name is Queen, and now she's dubbed queen of the average grade, so she's constantly calculating. I hope she doesn't quit because, but basically, we need the full height. Your 55 plus 15 exactly gives us what we need for lab building. 15-foot floor to floor, enough to support the systems. And we also looked very closely at something we heard is a concern to the town, which is views from 128. How would this development be viewed both in the summer and in winter, during the day and at night? And for that, this is the same view, but a bit closer, but going to this idea of the view from 128, it was something that CSD asked us to focus on. And what we've developed to study it, convince ourselves, and be able to convince everybody that where we place things and the height we place them at will not be visible. We have an animation that helps us visualize that. And if you, no audio, but so here's kind of flying over 128. It is, let me actually stop sharing and do another share that allows video to be better viewed. So give me a sec. So if I do share with, if nobody knows this trick, optimize for video and share, you get a much better animation. So here it is. So the first view is looking bird's eye view at the garage and the development. The garage is sitting in a valley, and the drop between where the garage sits and where we drive on 128 is so high that you don't see it. Similarly, northbound on 128, the development on the meadow is only 2 floors high, so it is like a drop down, and these two views are actually what we define as the weak points in visibility from 128. There's 2 points, and that's where the trees are less evergreen, and then there's a thinning of the amount of trees. Of course, in our planting diagram, we'll be trying to put evergreens to even shield it more, especially at night. And this animation we can do in the future with night simulation, just to see that there's no light pollution from any of the development towards. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. In addition to those who have spoken, we have Peter Muto, who's facilities director, and Peter Bordeaux, who's been working with the town. And if you want to pose questions, we're here to respond.
The ventilation for a lab, I didn't see any HVAC in your drawings. Is that something that is covered and hidden, and the lab and the ventilation of a lab, is that
let me go to
the air? So we haven't got into the design of that, but I can tell you that the current thinking is there will be a portion of the penthouse that will be enclosed for things that need service, and you don't want it in the snow. But we have a screen around to screen anything visually that is the exhaust. So the exhaust units will probably sit outside, and they'll have the stacks that blend the air, and so those will be sitting out here. Where exactly and how tall they need to be and all that will be, we'll have to come back to you with more information on it when development happens.
And the current site
plan, is there a lot of, are you doing a lot of rock cut? Or is it more fill, or is it cut? How much rock? Do
We're
you have any
trying
idea on
to
that?
balance for both, for practical reasons and financial reasons. We're trying to balance the cut and fill on the site. So there will be a little bit of rock removal as we sit into the cliff. You have to just flatten the rock and take some rock. Of course, we want to screen the Brady property to the north, and we will use that excavated material to burn and then plant on top of it. And Chris, describe what we're doing with this area too.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of miscellaneous mounds of material out there. So we have to talk with the current operator, what he wants to take away, what he's gonna leave. At the moment, we've assumed that most of those are gone. But if they're not, we can use them and, you know, for cost reasons, but also to reduce truck traffic and time. We really want to move the earth around on site and balance it ourselves. We'll be bringing in a lot of horticultural soils, obviously, and specialist soils for, you know, infiltration, that kind of thing, but generally we're trying to balance it.
Okay, I'll start with you, Chris.
So how high from the highest point of the site will the building be above that?
And the highest,
Yeah, so the highest elevation, ground
the
elevation.
ground elevation, which is what we call the upper meadow, yeah, to the top roof of the penthouse,
Yeah.
whatever size that penthouse will end up being, it'll be 50 feet. 2 floors of 15 plus a penthouse that BRPSA is saying plan on 20, we can squeeze it down, but to do the amount of heat recovery that they would like, height becomes necessary. So this is what we're allowing, and that keeps us within that envelope we described of the average grade to the zoning height limit.
Okay, your second question, the elephant in the room, I guess, is municipal services to this complex. And that includes Atwater Avenue. Is that going to require improvements? Is there going to be water and sewer connections? That sort of thing we have to think about.
The water and sewer, we've been working with the DPW director and also the town engineer. And the plan is there are sleeves that run under 128 over to Mill Street. And actually, that's where the MAC is connected to now with water, is actually through that sleeve. We're planning to improve that and to run up Mill and then all the way up Forest Street. And also to bring the sewer that way, we would install a pump station and would then run the sewer back to the gravity line. That is the ideal, again, working with, you know, with the folks in DPW and engineering. They feel that's the best place to go with it because the sewer is less taxed on that side of town. And then the electric, I believe the improved electric will be coming up at Water. We will have a traffic engineer on the project to assess Atwater. I've driven up and down that street now. I don't think there needs to be improvements to that street for the purpose of accessibility. It's pretty wide now, so, but we'll have our traffic engineer will look at that as well.
The electric run underground?
I believe it does, yeah, Peter is.
It will run, it'll probably come overhead, over the hill and underground of Atwater Avenue.
Sarah?
I just, I work in this industry, but I think when we were public hearing and maybe for the purposes of people paying attention here, it would be helpful for you to just explain what LEED means, LEED Gold, LEED Platinum, well standards, embodied carbon, ground source heat pumps. So, because people don't always understand that, so I think it would be helpful maybe just to get a quick, or certainly when you go forward to make sure you're using those words that people understand so that we get benefit of good public comment on the sort of even playing field of knowledge. I mean, you may want to take 2 minutes and just explain those.
Yeah, so LEED is what does it stand for? Leadership. Yeah. But it is a certification that you go after, and it has number of credits that you get by activities you do. And there's thresholds of silver, gold, and platinum. And each few years, it gets harder to do because they're pushing the envelope and they keep pushing it. So everybody's driven towards doing better each time. The same with local codes, right? So the stretch code, which Manchester is under, it's just constantly a moving target. So we're constantly having to, like, we can't just settle and say this will do it. It is always a challenge to get those credits and to achieve LEED Platinum, like we did at MIT's building, which was a heavy lab. It's a clean room, largest clean room facility for research in the country. You have to really do your research and understand exactly how do you tighten the energy requirement and how do you turn it down when it's energy is huge in labs because labs require a lot of air coming in and going out, and you're kind of heating and cooling that. So that's LEED.
Can I just,
Yeah.
so there's a landscape component. It's all around sustainability and environmental responsibility, basically. And I also don't remember what the acronym is, but protecting nature, low carbon, healthy place to live and work.
The challenge for us on LEED is that we don't get the credits you get when you're in the city and you got mass transportation. So here we need every point possible on all other fronts. So it is a challenge to get to gold, and but obviously a challenge we look forward to. And WELL is also a certification system that is focused on the well-being and the points you get for people healthy within the building. It ties to the idea of views, nature, daylighting coming in, movement, encouraging movement, etc. A project we just completed at Lehigh University was awarded an award from Fitwel that we didn't ask for, we didn't submit. They simply said, you got the most credits by doing all of these things. And it has things like the lighting is tied to the cycles of a human kind of, so it adjusts during the day. What's the name? There you go. But biophilic design, the ability to have green on the inside. And if you want to talk about green on the inside, have you ever been to CST's current facilities?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful greenhouse as you first walk in. We definitely want to capture that idea as well within the new facility. It's just
You also asked about the ground source heat pump. So the geothermal wells take advantage of the fact that deep in the ground it's about 50 degrees year round, so you can use it for cooling in the summer and heating in the winter. You're not drawing water out of the ground, but they're a closed loop that the water goes down and comes up, and is a very low carbon way of heating and cooling buildings.
embodied carbon is how much CO2 is tied to the production of a specific thing. Industry and CSD trying to move away from anything that produces more carbon. So there's a way to kind of calculate what materials cost the least amount of carbon in that sense. Putting carbon up in the atmosphere. So that's choices will be made based on this in our.
Thank you.
Laura?
Sure. Very interesting concepts. I'm looking forward to learning more about it. I appreciate the fairly compact nature of the development on the site and the really using that existing quarry and the grade change there to kind of nestle the building in. And I appreciate that you all use that you've done some study on the view sheds from 128. And I want to understand that a little more. I understand, Samir, that you found some kind of weak spots where maybe things are slightly more visible, given that, you know, that kind of steeply sloping woodland down to the road may change over time and, you know, conifers may come and go. Are there oblique angles where you might see in, or if there are a lot of glass surfaces, might you see, you know, reflections at certain times? Do you need to berm for any of that?
So let me describe here that the areas that we thought are, you know, what we like describe the weak points. There's an area right here that is the thinnest amount of trees between the highway. And that's the view that we tested and did the animation for. So the reason it's a weak point in our mind, it's just like thinner amount of wood. Of course, we can plant some more, but that will take a few years.
Sure.
Another angle is down here. There's a dip, there's a valley in the grade here. And if you stand up here, you can see the highway from this point.
Right.
So that view, I mean, if you stand and you want to look straight out here, I don't think you'll see it because the grades also go up. And so we've convinced ourselves that even in winter, because everybody was saying, in the summer we get it. When in winter, when there's no leaves on the trees, we convinced ourselves that the client is asking us to do that, and we're saying we don't see it.
Yeah.
If it's at this height,
Right.
you're not gonna see it. And
So that's through topography, not just the vegetation that is blocking.
it is
is that right?
exactly both. So
The
yeah.
two views you saw, we believe are the two weakest points.
Yeah.
And the photographs are taken in December, so it's really a worst case.
So you can see the elevation of 128. Of course, it changes a little bit, but relative to where the bottom of the quarry is already, it's lower. Then on the upper meadow, as we call it, where the cars are right here and the two-story unit. If you just that yellow line of a view angle, it's just already helped by the topography
Right.
plus the vegetation. So we're
Yeah.
convinced, and it's all model. We can bring the model and someone better
It'd be
than me.
interesting to actually
And
see
if
the,
they show
yeah,
me from this,
right.
show me from that.
Because the oblique view kind of changes as you go up.
Absolutely,
But
but we convince ourselves, let's
Yeah,
say,
that's
that
good.
we meet that requirement.
And I think that's part of, as you approach Cape Ann, that wooded feel on both sides really feels like you're going into a different place that's quite unique.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that's really important to preserve. So thank you for that. I had a few other questions regarding the site development. I know the buildings are still kind of blocks. The circulation, you seem to be taking advantage of kind of the ring road that's already there to an extent. And I understand the use below is gonna stay. Is that the quarry operation or what is that use?
No, that's the neighboring property. It's a storage.
Storage property,
Well,
okay.
the quarry on our side of the. country is
Yeah,
gonna be
okay.
completely-
It's not.
Yeah, so if the site has a lot of grade change already, I'm thinking about the accessible pedestrian routes through the site, not just through the buildings, but how you actually navigate the site from a pedestrian accessible point of view.
Yeah,
Are we
so.
Getting started on that.
We've kept all of the sidewalks below 5%, which is universally accessible, doesn't require handrails or landings. That's what we've been doing.
So that's both on the upper portion, so
Okay.
that's all 5%.
Yeah.
And the lower portion, of course, is all 5%. Of course, you can come into the building at the low point and an elevator would be close. So the same here, you come in and it's accessible. And getting to an elevator and all through the building is it makes it all.
Just to be very clear, there's two exceptions. One is this existing sort of back driveway, if you will. And one is this existing
That's the-
driveway
yeah.
that goes from top to bottom.
Right.
So they have to be below 10% for fire access.
Right.
But the accessible part of the driveway is all the way around here.
So do you have to go through the building to get from the upper part of the site to the lower as a pedestrian?
Or you can walk around the driveway.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, if you were coming from the trails to the MAC, you would take this lower route. I mean, obviously, if you're able-bodied, you can take the upper route too. But there's universal accessibility to all the major areas.
the site is clearly, I mean, I've walked around it, just looking at it, and I can see there's a lot of erosion and a lot of sedimentation, as you said. Are you all doing a baseline water quality sampling that might compare with what your projected water quality improvements are? And I know people are concerned about water quality and development in general, and it might help to really quantify what,
We hadn't really, we just knew we were gonna,
yeah,
everything we were gonna do is gonna be such a large improvement that we hadn't really thought of a base. Usually a baseline, we think of when you've got a site which is, for example, already wooded.
Right.
And you're saying, okay, well, let's study a baseline to show that we're not really impacting the site. Certainly we can discuss that with, but hadn't really entered our minds because it's so clearly gonna be a large improvement.
that would be interesting to actually be able to say what you did as a, you know, existing conditions and improvement. And then I just had a question about the kind of approach from Atwater Ave and Mac. I know you're saying you're not affecting it. Mac has a lot of impervious surface as well. That looks like it's probably draining off in a different direction, maybe towards 128. How do you, I mean, what's your approach to that? Do you kind of not touch it and it's a neighboring use, or do you try to integrate it with your campus and make it more pedestrian and bicycle friendly, and the approach from Atwater Ave? What are you thinking about that?
In the current plan, it's leave it as is for the use, and people can talk about the arrangement between CSD and the MAC in terms of operation. But we've talked about this before, that it is an amenity that I think will be another attraction to people coming. CSD is thinking about providing membership for all employees. But we know it needs care sometime down the line. When and how, we are not doing anything currently in the plan. But Mark, Mike, you can talk to your vision on what might happen in the future.
Right. Right now, I think you can get there by, certainly by bike. I don't know about walking up Atwater Ave and how, you know, safe or accessible that feels in terms of just being a pedestrian and getting to the MAC. So you're thinking about that whole sort of entry sequence.
I think if it weren't for the fact that there are wetlands tight to Atwater Avenue, improvement by way of a sidewalk might have been considered. But
Right, because there is no sidewalk there now.
no, but it's wet, and
Yeah.
so I'm not sure the Conservation Commission would want us to fill along Atwater Avenue in order to
And is
enhance
it too
that.
narrow to? This is a detail, we don't have to get stuck on it, but just thinking about sort of pedestrian access
This
overall to
one is
the
right up
campus.
tight to the road on both sides.
Yeah.
We are planting more trees around the map for shade and sort of make it less than the campus.
Do you know about how many trees you're expecting to plant overall on the site, just as a point of reference?
I could guess, but I'd rather not.
Yeah, that would be interesting to be able.
What would you guess be?
My guess? Well, when the architects were complaining about putting trees on the model, they said there's about 300 or 400, so that's what they thought. As I said, this is illustrative, and it depends how big the trees are and how quickly we want the screening to get going.
And they grow in rock.
I'm
They're
sorry?
small enough,
Grow in
Yeah,
rock.
that's a good point.
Well, we are importing it. We'll be
Alright.
importing a lot of manufactured horticultural
And on
stuff.
top of any rock, we'll have a layer of rock.
Can I just, to that, you might check with the Black Earth people. I don't know if they have a market for their soil, but they're a local company that's, composting our own food and waste, so.
Yeah, we'll have our own soil consultants.
And my last question for now was about the garage footprint, and you're showing TVs on top of that. So you're not thinking about the garage as the future expansion site building footprint, you're talking about it in the meadow.
Yeah, the area, the area that's now sort of full of those piles of stuff.
Yeah.
We would clean it up, seed it, and then sort of bank it for perhaps a future.
Mhm.
The garage is thought of as a two-phase thing that is kind of a prefab type garage,
Yeah.
to keep it also low for the
Yeah.
floor and not seen from 128, so it's like,
Right.
I have the
Yeah.
reason. So it is currently not thought of as, and it won't be structured to, turn it into a usable building because of that, definitely not labs. Well, because of that 11-foot floor. And there's no talk of anything that can sit on top of it, because
Okay.
then you'll see it from one side, and that is not the charge. So the thinking about the garage is making it close and having the possibility of people having ADA access from one level of the garage or more to the building out of inclement weather. Of course, we're gonna make it a pretty nice walk, 5% slope for people to walk out, and we want people walking outside more than inside. But we're providing both options.
Will any of the EV parking that's in the garage or on the site be publicly accessible? For people just coming to visit? Is it for employees only?
That's true. It is currently.
We've got a lot of
existing.
People come just to use. Not ours.
Thank you.
Mary?
Oh, thank you. I'm just gonna ask a couple follow-up questions to ones that were already asked and then a few additional ones. What is the elevation from 128 to the top of the building?
Oh, I don't have that numeric number. Can we get back to you on that? Yeah, I don't want to guess. It's 50 from the meadow up the elevation. Up on the meadow is 120 elevation.
There's 128 varies.
Yeah.
So roughly, whatever the ground level is there, so you're the hill is elevated up and then, so I guess how tall is that hill, basically? I can look it on
Yeah,
GIS,
well-
okay,
Well, we'll get that answer.
okay, thank you. Follow up on Ron's question with the HVAC, will there be visible smoke coming from them?
The answer, I think, is no. I just want to think of everything that we made. It's not, yeah, it won't be smoke as in, this is gonna be all electric as a facility. If there's anything, it'll be for emergency backup, gas boilers. But that's not any smoke. There will be a generator for emergency power. But that's true of any facility, and they have a stack to exhaust, typically, the fumes. So and the cooling is air. There isn't, sometimes you see on buildings, kind of more like evaporation, steam from cooling towers. This will be air to air cooling, so it's not water that creates steam.
So we wouldn't see something from 128, the steam.
No, you're not gonna see a chimney of anything. If that's a-
That was my question, thank you. Will there be blasting?
So we are removing some rock. How to do it is still, we need to talk to the CM about how they intend to do it. What we've heard so far, it's more cutting. We're trying to avoid blasting. But we don't know the answer exactly right now. So it's another one of those things that we should.
I think a lot more will be known and available at the public hearing.
Okay.
So
We
when
will
you
make
ask
sure
the
to,
questions,
address.
they'll come fully armed.
Sure, okay. So there's obviously a known electricity capacity on Cape Ann and many areas. How is that being addressed with this project for the town?
Charles, I think you know more about it.
National Grid has assured us that they can serve service for 3 megawatts of power. They're currently rebuilding their East Gloucester substation. When that's complete this summer, they'll have available capacity out of the West Gloucester substation, which will serve this property with only, I think it's a matter of half a dozen poles or something like that. That they'll need to add to serve this property.
Okay, so you don't have to hook into the Beverly.
We are
connection.
not making any upgrades for Manchester Beverly.
Okay.
Does the solar provide any supplement to the power grid or not? Not really,
No, it will obviously provide some supplement.
but not really.
Not in dark days. Yeah, no, yeah, it's only a small fraction of the power.
Sorry.
You'll do demand response, right?
Just one.
Yes.
last question. Just the last question. So we saw the phase 1, phase 2, and then you had the meadow area. And that will be for future development. I'm wondering if any of this land is going into conservation land?
You might recall that John Donovan actually gave 30 acres, which is the back part of this, to the trustees of reservations. So those trails go through part of what used to be quarry property. But at this point, even though there's not, the project doesn't anticipate development in the northern section, there's really no reason to consider that. We're just maintaining the existing trails.
Okay, so none of this 49 acres is currently slated for conservation.
Not at the moment.
Thank you. That's it.
Christina?
I really do appreciate the view shed from 128. I think that was a big concern when we were all talking about this rezoning. So thank you. I think from one of the slides, could you put the phasing, the last one, I think that flipped back to something else rather quickly. I didn't get a chance to look at
This
that.
phasing?
No, the very end. I think the last slide.
The last one, which is just the.
Exactly.
time-
Yeah.
timeline. Yeah, we didn't talk.
Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to take a look at that. So when do you want to break ground?
Well, we think construction on the buildings would start July 24, but we do anticipate that there will be some enabling projects ahead of that. And utilities being one of them, any work on earth excavation. So Columbia made a note to us that before this date, we will likely be wanting to do some prep work to receive it.
All right, and I think I answered one of my questions from going back and looking at a slide. Number of employees is about 460 total. Is that-
Yeah, that'd be about the number of, the seating available for
Okay.
that. You know, we would anticipate ultimately having probably a bit higher number of total employees, but we are like many companies, for people who typically work in offices, we are relatively hybrid in nature as well. So that reduces the need for, permanent seating.
So typical hours of operation?
Well, for the majority of people, it's sort of a 9 to 5, situation. We do have, some starting a bit earlier. We do maintain, our Tozer facility in Beverly, our warehouse is open to 8 p.m., but that is not planned for this. It's strictly R&D and office.
You're not anticipating like 24 hours?
No,
a day
absolutely
kind of
not. So the
breakdown?
typical workday, the vast majority of people would be out of the building by 5 and 6 at the latest, with relatively few people there at nights and occasionally on the weekends. But it's pretty much a daytime only.
Last question.
Will the building be lit all night?
Limited lighting.
Emergency.
Yeah, exactly.
So I believe that you are a level 2 laboratory, is that correct? Is there any anticipation of going to a level 3 at this facility?
Not at this point.
What does that mean? What does that mean exactly?
We have no plans to go to anything, higher than that. It currently meets all of our needs for us and our customers. So that is not.
The building is not designed for more than BSM2.
Okay, great, thanks. I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Betsy, do you have any comments?
I'm Betsy Ware, I'm the interim planner. And the process for this would be, once you submit your application, it's going to be a little different than what's been done in the past, where staff and board members and have provided comments. We will be having, instead, we'll be having a series of meetings with your group to basically sit down go around the table, understand what the issues are, try to hash out various issues. I've done this process in a number of communities. It works very well.
Yeah, and we do understand that the site plan approval process gives you an opportunity to hire consultants at our expense to review the materials that we're presenting to you. So we would anticipate that. And we would also anticipate that Paul Orlando may not be the inspector of this building. There may be some other firm that performs that function.
Especially with the new stretch code.
Hmm?
Especially with a new stretch code. That, which is an enhanced building code, which is now in effect. Energy.
Could Betsy explain what she said about the permitting process? I'm not clear on that.
So commonly what happens right now is that the planning board gets an application, they ship it out to everybody, and they ask for comments. When I arrived here 3 months ago, you didn't get a lot of comments on a couple of the special permit applications. What I'm suggesting that staff do is sit down with the applicants and everybody try to put in writing what they should be putting in writing in terms of their concerns. If they don't put it in writing, they're sitting at a table to explain their concerns. So that then what happens is I write a staff memo to this board, which explains what are the what we've talked about, what issues have been resolved or issues that are a concern from various departments, and any outstanding issues. And then that memo comes to this board.
Maybe we should
So
formalize
they're
this
gonna
new
come back in
special
April,
permit process.
right? And this would be a special permit hearing when they come back.
Right.
Which may stretch over. a
Right,
few
so,
meetings.
so what would happen is the first public hearing for this project, you would have a very
That's what-
detailed email, memo from all the town staff, which basically explains what are the outstanding issues, what issues have been resolved, just the basics all the way down.
Okay.
And if, so for example, if it's determined that there's nobody in town hall that is capable of doing reviewing the traffic study, we might want to hire, there might be a recommendation in that memo for a traffic study. Or there might be a recommendation for somebody who's going to analyze the blasting. Or, something like that.
That sounds like a good idea, because oftentimes we don't get comments from.
Right,
To chase the
exactly.
fire chief or the police or the Concom, so.
So in April, you plan to have more quantified design with quantities and
So,
that's your plan in 2 months to have better.
that's the plan. But we are aware that as you're saying, that there will be things that you'll ask us to dive into and bring you a detailed study on. We won't have all of that. So for us, it's our initial presentation, explaining more about the design of the buildings, that what you see here, which is mainly the master plan. So there's a site plan approval, and then there's the special permit for the actual the buildings.
For the use. A special permit for the use.
For the use, yeah. The permit for the building happens much later.
And then we'll have public input also.
Yes.
No.
But we, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we anticipate that it will be an iterative process that we meet, we get, and we bring you
Yes.
back whatever you ask for, and we, so April for us is the first step.
Okay.
In that process.
Are you meeting with other boards in town?
The only, Peter Gordeau's been meeting with Chuck Dam to discuss the sewer and water issues. We have been meeting on a regular basis with a representative from the Board of Select People, or Selectmen.
Plan to meet with the fire department. And you're probably.
What about Concom?
Yeah.
Concom has been, we're in the middle of right now, what's called an ANRAD process where which is not talking about any of what we're proposing, it's them agreeing with our line, with our wetlands line and what areas are protectable. And then we plan to run this parallel with filing with the planning board, file with the commission at the same time. For one of the conditions.
Any other board?
Yeah, I just had
Laura
I'm
first?
sorry, I was thinking more about this as we were talking about the Concom and the kind of environmental impacts of the site and. You know, if you zoom out a little bit, the connectivity of the site. Given that it's either abutting or close to other large wooded tracts or conservation land. I'm wondering if the team has given any thought to working with wildlife biologists in terms of habitat connectivity. It would also just be interesting to see, you know, for trail connectivity for people's use, you know, how it kind of fits within the larger trail network, but particularly where, you know, we have a lot of adjacent wetlands, we have a lot of adjacent habitat. It's important to do what you're doing already with trees and native plantings and all of that, but I think it's hard for us as landscape architects to say, yes, this provides the connectivity. And so having a scientist on the team who could really evaluate that, I think would be really valuable, something that you all would consider.
Great idea. We'll look into that.
Great.
So, Mark, I assume you know that the AG is about to approve, I hope, the zoning amendments that we did last November, which include a new site plan review set of standards.
Yes,
So you've seen them, you know.
yes. Thank you for the heads up, though.
Any other comments from the board? Sarah?
Just in the question of Atwater Avenue, I think, I'm wondering if there's a way that a traffic engineer might, look at a bike lane. Or, you know, even just a straight lane, some way to traffic calm and to, increase, the biking safety, on that road. Bike
We
it.
have tons of people who bike to work.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, and encouraging and then the other question I have is there a cafeteria in this building? So of course, we're gonna we hope that your staff will also frequent our downtown. And so obviously that's, you know, you're gonna want a cafeteria on site, but
It's a double-edged sword.
yeah, it is, of course.
Because some people may be worried about traffic downtown.
I know, but the merchants downtown certainly would like that. So yeah, we have a wonderful downtown.
Yeah, and there could be a shuttle.
But it's also presently a wonderful cafeteria. I'm sure it's gonna get even better.
It's the best espresso on the North Shore.
I mean, great.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
thanks for,
Thank you.
Anybody else?
No, that's public.
we have a quick comment, sure.
Yeah, I did. Thanks for, I'm John. John Keith, Victoria Road. It's nice to see things in their sort of state or early stage, because it's the opportunity to make changes before they get too far down the road. I think a lot of the comments were made here were spot on. I had a number of observations that I wanted to just share with you, not necessarily looking for an answer, but I would say considerations as you go to your next level of design.
Can you be brief?
It's a bit of a writing, could you say?
Well, yeah, I guess I'll be brief and I can follow up in writing because I think they're fairly substantive issues. I think, you know, we've talked, one thing I would talk about is the sewage. I know it seems like a foregone conclusion that there's a sewer hookup. I'm not sure the town can afford that. I'm not sure we're gonna pay for it. I understand one process is in progress to ask for grants that may or may not be true, but that would probably would cause our zoning in that kind of change in that case. I think that'd be presumptuous to rely on those sorts of things. You could probably put parking under your buildings and take some of the parking away and do a little bit of changing around, make the septic field possible, your own treatment plant. Along with that, the traffic at Water Ave, there's a lot of joggers go up and down that road. That is not just a bike path. I see people running up and down all the time on that. So I think it's a huge issue relative to public safety at Water Ave, notwithstanding the wetlands, but that's your challenge to sort of solve. The site lighting, we talked a little bit about, obviously for the, for the animals, et cetera. The other concern I had was just traffic mitigation in general, 500 trips a day coming in out of that corner. We're gonna do up on School Street there for decel lanes, turn off lanes, et cetera. Obviously, nobody wants to see a traffic light there, but that kind of traffic load might be actually causing that through traffic engineering. I think the town should get peer reviewers.
We're gonna have peer review of traffic.
Right on this.
Sewer, all that stuff. We are.
And those are, some of the key issues I thought that, I think the sewer one's a big one. I just don't think should be taken for granted. I think there should be some investigations on site treatment. Given the size of your site, and the opportunities with the grades and the existing stuff you gotta remove anyway. And consider maybe just putting some parking underneath, reduce that parking. Just some quick thoughts, but I can follow up in writing and writing those consideration. Throw them out there for your thoughts, so the town has a great outcome.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming in. We'll see you again in a couple of months.
Thank you, appreciate it. Sorry.
At this point, I'd like to ask for
Move we adjourn. Yeah, I know. I wouldn't be afraid of that.
favor.
Aye.
Gotta be prepared.
So, but there's no problem.